I have thank you for sharing. This is so interesting. I'm just realizing that we have kind of the opposite perceptions of what the dependency is here, because so I mentioned before, I had quite a lot of autonomy as a kid. It didn't feel like agency, but there in fact was a lot of autonomy. And I had complete lack of faith in myself. I even remember, like, when I was around 18, I came to school to find out the results of my exam, one of the finals, which affected a lot in my future, like what kind of university I can get into. And I was shaking and crying to the point that I actually took my brother that you guys have seen now. He's taller than me, but he's 10 years younger, so he was like 7 at the time or 8. And I clung to him for moral support. Like, I was that devastated. I lacked faith in myself that much, and my teacher looked at me and she was like, you worked in different countries alone at this age. How come you have so little confidence in yourself? And later, a little bit later in life, when I started reflecting on my relationship with religion, so I'm not from a religious family, so I have sort of the opposite situation here. It occurred to me that, there might be some correlation between having faith in God, like, having I'm not sure if it's about the cognitive capacity, but, for the psyche, for the whole psyche, to have a capacity to have faith in something. I lacked that capacity. And, I came to a conclusion that it must have affected my capacity to trust in general. Like, I'm from an atheistic family, so I've never thought that there is something. I still struggle with construing the idea that there might be something, like a God. So this is very counterintuitive to me, like on the physiological level, the whole idea feels counterintuitive. And I figure that it might have affected the fact that I have a problem with faith in general, including self-trust. And autonomy didn't help. If anything, I feel like it felt like it was too much and I was doing
too much too early.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on these, like, dependencies, interdependencies?
So guidance is the right balance between structure and freedom. Okay, and actually they would kick me out and I would have the freedom, but I come home to the structure. And having a lifestyle based on going to church on Sunday and going to the catechism on Wednesday and praying before the dinner was structure. Okay, regardless of what the beliefs were, my family lived their life based on a set of routines and structural expectations that came from that community, that way of functioning. And I think that's one reason why religion continues to hold up, is because it represents community. It represents a safe kind of lifestyle where people know who each other is, and they have the community that's based on those common ideas. Okay, now we can debate as much as we want about how true they are or whether, but I think there's Hélène de Botton wrote a book, Religion for Atheists, and he basically talks about all the benefits that come along with being part of a religious community. So I think, that struggle that you described is one between the structure, the lack of structure. So you had autonomy before you were developmentally ready for that. And that's why you felt overwhelmed at certain times when you're going to be measured or when there's something that would represent some feeling of success or failure. Then, so I think, and I think you're right, religion may have been something that might have offered that in your life. I mean, it's only hypothetical that we can imagine that, but I think it does. Religion can serve as a guideline for the way people live their life, you know.
Yeah, and I think like structure and guidance, of course, is really important. And I consider myself lucky enough because, of course, as I mentioned before, I had a great childhood and a lot of freedom. And I had to go back to that feeling of freedom because at one point I was kind of like lacking the guidance or maybe the exchange or maybe the communication with my parents, because I always considered me as like, I was so grateful to be able to spend time in England and having also two parents. My mom's English, so Athens, my dad is from the south of Italy, so it's really traditional, so really black and white. They still love each other, but I grew up with this contrast, also values and opinions. It's always been a dance of contrast that worked really well. But at the beginning, being able to spend time in England when I was younger, having a lot of freedom in making mistakes. I didn't realize it back then because I was younger, but it's true that when I look back, I had parents, especially my mom, who was always able to put me in front of a decision, whether there was pain, whether she would never really maybe, how can I say, trying to assist me with a decision. So she gave me a lot of freedom. But when I was maybe, 16, 18, I kind of felt a little bit of lacking guidance because I wanted to have that even dialogue or exchange. Not that it was anything wrong, it was just the way she probably dealt with situation with parents as well. So it was beautiful from her end to give me a lot of freedom, but then in the long run I realized that I found it was a good training, for what was coming, because you find yourself in analyzing, making a lot of mistakes with relationship and not having anyone really to maybe stop you or judge you or just observing. So with time I understood more what happened there and how I built the relationship with my parents and the autonomy and freedom that I had, which I was grateful for because they built, I consider myself like I have a strong mindset, and I think those periods, those choices, those mistakes have a lot of, have contributed to this for sure. But then there's always, when you observe it, there's always that kind of like acknowledgement of kind of feeling a little bit of lack. It's never going to be a perfect balance. We know that. Sometimes you have a lot of guidance, sometimes too much. Sometimes you have a lot of structure and you want to escape. So I think I had a good balance, but I realized that what made me stronger and more powerful was also being able to throw myself out there and make a lot of mistakes and just being accountable for my decisions. So I've recognized that with time. I think I was suffering a little bit along the way because I thought, why no one is, jumping in and interfering or giving me advice. And then I realized, okay, I've got this. And that was useful, for the rest of my journey. So